Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. So happy to have you here. I hope you've had a wonderful week. Hopefully, it's not as rainy and depressing where you are as it is where I am. I'm so happy to have you here. I have some fun things to talk about with you this evening. So, first, I want you to feel reassured knowing you're in the right place if you want to learn more about how to teach empathy to your students. If you need some help in the creativity department when it comes to teaching empathy, maybe you just need some creative ideas or a place to get those creative juices flowing. Or maybe if you've purchased some of my empathy related resources and want some more guidance. So if you are new around here, I am very passionate about teaching soft skills in an upper elementary classroom. And what I like to do is, this is also how I feel it could or should be taught in the classroom, is by focusing on one soft skill a month. So that's how I'm going to be releasing content to you guys, is just by focusing on one soft skill per month and kind of doing a deep dive into that soft skill. And then the next month going on to the next one. So this month, February, we're all about empathy. And then in March, we'll work on a different soft skill that you could be teaching your students. So again, if you're new around here, my name is Jennifer Gauthier. I'm an elementary ELA teacher, and I help teachers bring more soft skills instruction into their classroom without compromising the skills you have to teach. So those hard skills that you're assessing students on every day. And again, this is like last week. If you were here last week, I am re-recording this because I am currently taking a workshop every Monday nights and Thursday nights. So this is re-recorded, but I will be on live and answering any questions. So please feel free to drop any questions, anything that sticks out to you, and I will be sure to reply. Now, before we jump in tonight, I'm super excited to announce to you that I am going to be participating in a really, really fun event. This is for upper elementary teachers, and we're going to be talking all things ELA. It's from March 11th to 13th, and the best thing is it's completely free. There is a sign up where you can sign up for, I think, a bit of money, and you would get a whole library of incredible bonuses. I got to take a look at the bonuses, and yeah, they're actually incredible. But again, it is completely free if you just want the basic ticket. I will drop the link in the description of this video so you can go sign up if you're interested. I mean, what's better than free PD? I don't know. But I'm going to be presenting on how to teach soft skills in 5 minutes or less a day. So, and the speakers list, again, it's actually incredible, the people that are going to be participating. So definitely go check that out. And one more thing before we get started, I swear it's the last thing. If you have not yet done so, please go download the Project-Based Learning and Soft Skills Complete Guide, soon to be renamed the Soft Skills Guide, because I know not everyone is a project-based learning teacher, but this freebie has some assessment tools on assessing soft skills, which is almost, I would say, the #1 pain point for teachers teaching soft skills is they don't know how to assess them. So there's a free assessment guide in there. There's also an idea on which soft skills to teach which month. If you follow my model of focusing on one skill each month, I give you kind of some ideas on which soft skills would suit which month of the school year, and some other strategies, daily habits you could be using to teaching those soft skills, and tons more. So definitely go get your hands on that. Again, I'll put the link in the description of this video. Please comment, tell me if you've gotten the guide already, what your thoughts are on it, if there's anything you feel like it's missing, and I would be sure to update that for you. So let's get started. I want to jump into 5 common barriers to teaching empathy in the classroom and some ideas on how to overcome those barriers. So I've been spending a lot of time in different Facebook groups, in my own Facebook group. If you're not part of that group yet, please go join. I'll put the link in the description of this video. And I've been part of other Facebooks as well. And I've been asking teachers what their biggest hurdle or barrier is to teaching empathy in the classroom. And maybe I've been asking people if they feel like they think empathy is lacking in their classroom and why they think that is. So I've kind of compiled the 5 most common answers I've seen. and just some ideas on, if you're having these challenges as well, some ideas that you can be using to overcome those challenges in your own classroom. So the first barrier I've noticed, and other teachers have shared that they have found to be a challenge, is the lack of awareness. Now, when I mean lack of awareness, I don't mean lack of awareness of what empathy is. What I mean is that the first step of becoming more empathetic is being aware of how people are feeling around you. Now, I think because, it could be because of a lot of things, but I think because of technology primarily, that students are so focused on, their devices or themselves that they have kind of, I want to say there's a decline in our awareness and not just kids, as adults as well, of how other people are feeling outside of the bubble of ourselves. And that is the first part of becoming more empathetic, is being aware of how people are feeling around you. And I think that's really something that we need to tap into and get students to be practicing more, is that life is happening outside of just them and their screens. And we need to teach students how to acknowledge how people are feeling around them. And please comment down below if you agree with these hurdles or barriers that I'm sharing. So please comment if you agree, and this is something that you've noticed in your own students, that they are very, I don't want to say self-obsessed, or as a culture, I think we have become very self-obsessed. And I think that's something that we kind of need to break as educators. So how do we teach students? That's the big question. How do we teach them to show more awareness for the people around them? So one is by modeling to students and by using certain language around them as often as possible. So as a teacher, I would say something like, if I see a student is maybe frustrated or upset, I would say, I can tell that you're feeling frustrated. So you're acknowledging that the person is feeling a certain way. Or another thing you could say is, I noticed you were really upset when blah, blah, blah happened. So that's really just like using that language as much as possible. And that could even be a discussion with students. If you have students in older grades, maybe like in upper elementary, you can ask them, like, what are some things that you would say to show someone that you're acknowledging how they're feeling? And another way to do this is discussions around fictional characters. So asking students, if you're reading whether it's a picture book or a class novel, how do you think that character was feeling when this happened to them? So it gets them thinking about how someone else is feeling, even if it's a fictional character. Another project or activity I think would be really cool is, and I think this really could be like a whole project if you're into project-based learning, is to learn about body language and nonverbal cues. So maybe students have never heard of body language or nonverbal cues before, and it could be a whole project that they would do, kind of exploring what nonverbal cues are and what does body language mean. Because sometimes, actually, I wouldn't say sometimes, I would say most of the time, when you are acknowledging how someone is feeling, that person is not outright telling you how they're feeling. You have to use those nonverbal cues to figure out how that person is feeling. And it does take a lot of practice, and it is challenging, especially for kids. So teaching them about nonverbal cues and body language would be a good first step in teaching them how to be more empathetic. So barrier number 2 is actually something I pulled from my own experience. So I was a part of a project called the Nora Project, which is absolutely incredible. I'll put the link in the description of this video if you want to check it out. It's a project that was started in the States, in Illinois, and it's a project that pairs able-bodied students with students who have disabilities. And you spend the year getting to know that person, and so not only are you spending time with children who have disabilities, but you're also there's a whole curriculum created by the Nora Project that teaches students how to show empathy. And the number one thing and if you've taught empathy before, you probably know this, the number one saying or explanation or definition that people give around empathy is putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. And then it kind of stops there. And so I was guilty of this myself. Like I would often use that example of putting yourself in someone else's shoes. But what I noticed is that students were very limited to that idea. So, but then how do you put yourself in someone else's shoes if you've never experienced what they've experienced? So, for example, if I was teaching my students to show more empathy to their new friends who have a disability, but if they don't have a disability, how are they supposed to put themselves in another person's shoes? So I think as teachers, we need to broaden our explanation or our understanding of what empathy means. And it's not just putting yourself in someone else's shoes. And we need to teach our students, I don't have to have experienced exactly what you're experiencing right now in order for me to show you empathy. So let's say, for example, I want to think of an example to use. Let's say that I am a student and my friend has just failed a test. And maybe they studied really hard for that test, but the material was very difficult for them. Maybe they don't do very well in tests in general. Now, do I have to have failed a test in order to know how that person's feeling? Maybe I've never failed a test before. So I think examples like that to show students that we don't need to experience the exact same thing that that person is experiencing in order to show empathy. Instead, what we should be doing is teaching students to first acknowledge how that person is feeling. So not only have they failed a test, because of that, they're feeling defeated. Maybe they're feeling a bit embarrassed that they failed. Maybe they're disappointed. Maybe they're worried that their parents are going to be upset with them because they failed a test. So you need to first understand or acknowledge what they're feeling, not just what they're experiencing, but how they're feeling. Then reflect on how have I or when have I felt that way before. So maybe I've never failed a test, but maybe I was really embarrassed because I didn't do as well on a presentation that I was giving in class, or maybe I was worried that my parents were going to get upset with me because I hit my younger brother, like that feeling of anxious or worry that you're going to get in trouble. So I can then understand, okay, I have maybe not failed a test, but I understand how they're feeling because this happened to me. And I remember that feeling. And then that's what causes, a relationship because you're relating to how that person is feeling. So I think the idea is to get students to understand that you don't need to know or have experienced the exact same thing as someone in order to show empathy towards that person. So that's the barrier, is getting stuck in, well, I don't know how that person feels because that's never happened to me before. And then the solution to that is then teaching them that empathy doesn't need to be, I know exactly how that person felt because the exact same thing happened to me, if that makes sense. Please let me know if you have any questions, if you kind of feel that way, that you've noticed that as well. Barrier number 3, and this was probably the overwhelming answer I got when I was asking people, when I was asking teachers what some barriers were for them in teaching empathy, which was that it's not being modeled or taught at home. And this is kind of a controversial one because lots of people think that it should only be taught at home. And yeah, so I think in this topic, one, we need to give parents some grace. And I think that empathy is something that not everyone does learn. I know for me, like I only really got a better understanding of what empathy was when I was teaching it myself. So I think that, and because of some of the barriers we're talking about tonight, empathy is not something that's taught in school, or at least it wasn't taught when I was in school. So I think we need to give parents some grace. And I think that it's even more of a reason that we should be focusing on it in school, because maybe students aren't getting these kinds of lessons at home. So I think that school is the perfect place for them to learn about it. That's my opinion. Please let me know if you agree in the comments. But I think there are some ways to get around this. And I think that involving parents, I think this is true for any topic no matter what you're teaching, but trying to get parents involved as much as possible is ideal. So I think there are some ways to teach, or maybe not teach parents, but tell them that this is something that is important to your class culture, and it's something you want to bring to students as much as possible. And if that teaching can be carried through at home as well, that's even better. So there are ways that you can go about this. There could be emails you send to parents that you're telling them, you know, maybe this month we're focusing on empathy, and here's some strategies that we're going to be using in the classroom, and here's some strategies that you can be doing at home with your children. I think if you're having a curriculum night at the beginning of the year, again, that's a great place to tell parents and let them know the expectation that maybe you're going to be focusing on one soft skill every month, or maybe it's empathy is something you want to be focusing on all year round. So you would want to tell parents beforehand that, look, this is a value or a skill that is really important to our class. And if you could get on board and be modeling it at home as much as possible, that would be great as well. So there could be emails that you send to parents. Give shout outs if you notice that students are showing empathy. Maybe shout that out to the parents and let them know what great things are happening in your classroom. It could be a monthly or a weekly newsletter, and even homework. So if you have simple thing, I'm not a huge fan of homework, as I think I said last week, but there are some things that you could be doing, like reading texts that display empathy, some task cards that are kind of like discussion starters. I have some empathy task cards that I can link in this video. That could be something that's super easy. It's not like a super time-consuming activity. And I think that parents are struggling to get their children to talk at home because they are so glued to devices. So I think that not all parents, but I think a lot of parents would love that if you sent task cards home and said, like, here are some discussion starters that you can, you know, be using at the dinner table to get your children talking while they eat dinner. So I think small things like that would be a great addition. And it's not something that they have to do every single night, but it's more something like, if you're looking for some things to be doing with your children at home, then here are some task cards or some writing activities. I think that's a great option for parents. So barrier number 4 and 5 kind of do blend together, but it's a lack of time. So teachers, we know time is so precious, and we are always saying that, you know, there's just never enough time. So, and I agree that this is a very valid barrier, in that we have so many skills we need to be teaching students, and there is just such a lack of time that I don't have time to teach skills like empathy and other soft skills like time management or teamwork. So I think that's completely valid. And I think that's why I personally like the idea of just focusing on one soft skill a month. And that's why I mentioned earlier that event that I'm going to be participating in March. I'm sharing ideas for teaching soft skills in less than 5 minutes a day. So that could be just one daily habit that you're practicing with students. Please go download that soft skills, the free guide I mentioned before, because I shared tons of ideas and they all take 5 minutes or less a day. So this could be done, you know, as a bell ringer activity when they're coming in at the beginning of the day. When they have finished an activity, they can go and do this habit. So I think it's really about finding small pockets of time that you can be spending to these types of soft skills. And, you know, like you might say, yeah, but empathy is such a big skill. I want to spend tons of time on it. If I can't spend tons of time on it, I'm not going to bother. But I think that's more of a reason why just spending 5 minutes a day, if it's like an all or nothing type of thing, I think just 5 minutes a day can make such a difference. So take small steps and embed the learning you are already doing. So if you are an ELA teacher and you're already doing writing, you're already doing reading, you're already doing speaking and listening. So just trying to find ways to teach empathy into those things like you're already doing. Like if you're doing writing prompts, why not make a writing prompt that is related to empathy? If you're reading a class novel, try and find novels that really display empathy, or like I mentioned earlier, really get those conversations with students going about how the characters are feeling. And even, it doesn't even have to be explicitly teaching. Like studies show that reading fiction is one of the best ways to teach empathy, because as students are reading, they're getting into the mind of somebody else. So I really think the key here is not putting too much pressure on yourself, and just finding as little pockets of time, or if you're looking for a material to use with your students, just try and be more conscious of what are some texts that would show empathy if I'm already choosing a text that I need for my classroom. So as I mentioned, this one and the previous one kind of coincide. So the barrier number 5, empathy is not something that I can easily measure. I can't give my students a quiz and then figure out, okay, this person has empathy and this person doesn't. And because of that, we do tend to focus more on the skills that are measurable, and that will, be shown in an assessment or in a final exam. And I think that, yes, like empathy and other soft skills are not as easily measured, but there are ways that you can make it not necessarily measurable, but more, you can observe it more. If you are seeing it in the classroom, there are ways that you can kind of be in tune to whether or not students are getting it or not. So the big question here is, how can you tell if someone is showing empathy? And I think this actually would be if you are a project-based learning teacher, this could be a great driving question for a project, is how can you tell if someone is showing empathy? And you can pose the question to your students and have them create a checklist, have it, make it a class rule. Like what is one class rule that we can have that would ensure that we are showing empathy as much as possible? And as I mentioned before, embed it in the learning as much as possible. Be showing, as I mentioned earlier, just try and model it as much as possible. And there are so many videos you can show them. I mean, TED Talks are a great one for that. And there are texts you could be reading. You could be using social media as a way to teach empathy, and just trying to find as creative and as many ideas as possible to really bring it into the learning. And as we're talking about, videos to show, my favorite video to show students what it means to have empathy is the Brené Brown empathy video. It's on YouTube. It's a speech that Brené Brown gave. If you don't know who Brené Brown is, she's a scholar and she's a researcher into empathy and other, like vulnerability. And she gave a really powerful speech. And then whoever the organization was, I'm blanking on their name right now, whoever was hosting that event where she gave the speech, they turned it into an animated short video. And it's just like, it's very clearly shows what empathy means. And I love showing that video to students. And my blog post this week was actually all about that video. And it gives some questions to ask students before the video, during the video, and after the video. So it's like a guide on how to use this video in the classroom. So I'll put the link to that blog post in the description of this video. Please let me know if you've watched it, what you thought about it, and whether you check out this blog post, and if you decide to use it in your classroom. I'd love to hear from you. But yeah, so this is just one example of a great video to show your students about what it means to show empathy. So that is all for this evening. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for asking any questions or any comments. I love hearing your feedback. And I will be going live again next Thursday. And yeah, please go download that guide if you have not yet done so. It's in the process of being updated right now. And so if you download the guide now, you'll get on my email list and you'll be the first to know when it has been updated. I hope you have a wonderful week and talk soon. Bye.